Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is a trainer education, and we're going to discuss individualizing your voice. So what this is in regards to is how you coach your clients should be specific to their needs. So too often trainers will kind of like coach, like how you motivate them, how you correct them, how you educate, how you give cues. They'll coach their clients more so towards what that trainer is comfortable with and or what that trainer would like, rather than actually doing it in the way that's best for the client. So this past weekend, I went and took two clients to a powerlifting meet, and they did really well. So they all hit PRs and won their divisions and whatnot. So it was a good weekend. But I have to, when I go do competitions like that, I am very aware of, when I work with each individual athlete, what would be the best communication style for that athlete. So I don't coach them the way that I would be coached. So like when I go do competitions, I'm usually already hyper focused and really ready to go. So actually, that's some of the limitations I have for myself as an athlete. Is I'm usually so damn amped up and ready to go that I go through my warm ups because I know I'm supposed to, but I don't even feel like I need them. Like if somebody just said I want you to squat 500, I'd say okay. And then I'd go squat 500. I don't even care if I warmed up. I'm just like, I'm freaking ready to do this. Like I've been training hard, so I'm just kind of fired up and excited and ready to go do it. So that's been my own trouble. I've had some injuries over the years from not warming up completely and actually being numb. I can't feel my body sometimes when I get like that type of competition excitement. So that becomes difficult sometimes. But what I've learned through that was that is how I am. So I'm really fired up. I'm kind of ready to go. I don't really need much coaxing, much direction. Actually, if people start talking to me, it just annoys me. So if somebody's like, come on, man, you've been training hard. I'm like, shut up. I know it. I'm fine. But some people do need coaching to get over nerves. Some people beat themselves up so damn bad that if you try to be all like hyper and like, come on, man, let's go, let's do this, they're already doing that in their head so much they don't need that. So you have to really learn the individual client's needs, and not only for competition, but just for regular training as well. So, like for example, in competition, is I have some people where they're already naturally pretty nervous. So I try to stay really calm. I'm not going to chat about things that aren't related to what we're doing. So if they're getting ready for, and I help people for aesthetic competitions too, and this applies as well. So if they're getting ready to go out on stage and pose, I'm not going to be talking about, such and such person's like swimming trunks or, what are we going to eat after the competition? Because their mind needs to be focused on what they're doing. But you can just be there and be calm. So if they kind of look nervous, you can say, hey, you've practiced this a bunch. You're going to be totally fine. And you just say something nice and calm like that. But if you see somebody's not focusing, so I have had clients before where, they have a loved one with them or they have a friend or something, and they're just not focusing in, and I've had to take them to the side and say, hey, listen, I know this person's here for you, and these people are here for you, but you need to pay attention to what the hell you're doing. We need to focus in. We need to crush this stuff. We need to do the best we can. You put a lot of effort into this, and right now you're going to lose the result if you don't focus in and do your best. So sometimes there's like gentle corrections like that. And if you notice, none of those involve screaming. So that very rarely is helpful. However, I do have some clients. So I remember I did a bench only meet with a guy once who wanted to rip everyone's head off, but that's how he performed best. So as long as he wasn't being disrespectful and cussing, and telling everybody to go screw themselves and stuff, we were just laying back there and we are like, come on, man, let's freaking crush this shit, and we were being very aggressive, and but that's what he needed. So typically, as I get to know the client more, I'll even ask them if they seem like they have self-awareness in the sense of being able to communicate that to me. I'll ask them like, hey, how do you want me to behave on this event? Like, do you want me to kind of be fired up, or do you like staying calm? So I'll even ask them a little bit. If I know it's somebody who's never really competed before and they don't really have they have a hard time controlling their own emotions. They're going to have a hard time telling me what to do in terms of how to help because they don't even know how to help themselves. So sometimes I won't ask. I'll just kind of like get a feel of the day as it's going and kind of mold myself into what they might need. So that's what I'm going to get across in this podcast is if you are a trainer, don't train your clients how you would want to be trained. That's going to seem kind of maybe a little bit counter to what you might hear, but they're not you. So we all have different personalities. We all have different temperaments on the competition day versus training day, stuff like that. So what you want to do is find out how could you best fill in the gaps for them. So if they lack calmness and they're super hyper nervous, that's what you want to be, is you want to be the calm one for them. You can't be nervous too, because that's just going to mess everything up. If they're hyper fired up and they're like, getting like too aggressive to the point where they're just kind of throwing the weight around or they're not paying attention to their technique, you've got to bring them down. You've got to calm them down. So that way they can stay safe and they can perform their best. So sometimes you have to fight against a client's natural behavior, and sometimes you have to almost enhance their natural behavior. And what I mean by that is like you might have somebody who's overly arrogant, and they're going to come in and be like, oh man, we've been doing this good. I'm going to do this fine today. I'm going to set this record. I'm going to do this. And you have to be like, hold on now. So let's calm down. Let's not worry about setting records. Let's just try to get a lift to count in the meet. Let's just do the basics first. And if there's cool stuff on top of that, great. Because sometimes people will kind of get fired up and they'll try to do this crazy weight and they're focused so ahead. Like in powerlifting, for example, you have 3 lifts that you have to do: a squat, bench, and deadlift. And for each lift, you have 3 attempts in front of the judges. Typically, you do kind of a lighter heavy, a medium heavy, and a heavy heavy as your 3 attempts. But they'll be focusing on that heavy heavy, and they don't even pay attention to the light heavy. So they kind of like let their tightness go, and they sink below parallel, tweak their back, and all of a sudden they can't do the heavy heavy attempt. So you have to protect your athletes sometimes against their natural behaviors. So if they're overly arrogant, overly cocky, and they're not paying attention to detail, you've got to calm them down. However, if you have somebody who's very timid, they're just kind of super tight, they're not even hitting parallel in their squats because they're so damn nervous, you got to check and make sure like they're not bringing their feet too narrow, which is a natural reaction when someone gets nervous. They tend not to open up their feet as much. They also tend to overly tighten their adductors and their hip flexors. So you have to get them to calm down. You have to relax their nerves so that way they can get their feet where they want them. And that's something you can even help as a coach. You can say, like when they step back, you can say, hey, wider, wider, wider until they get their feet set. But you can't do much for the hip flexion and the adductor tightness. So you have to get them to turn off those protective tightnesses. It's almost like when somebody gets nervous, we want to curl up into a fetal position. That's our natural reaction. So the musculature needed for the fetal position tends to be tight. So it's kind of a weird phenomenon, but you'll see that they'll tighten up their adductors or tighten up their hip flexors, and they'll have a hard time hitting parallel. So when somebody's that nervous, you have to calm them down. So you almost have to talk them up and say, hey, we've practiced this a bunch. This is a weight you've done before. You'll be fine. So just relax, take some deep breaths. When you go down, remember to kind of split the floor, push your knees out. You'll just kind of fit in whatever your cue is for that so that the athlete would understand. So that's a whole other thing about not throwing in brand new cues on the day of a competition. So we'll come back to that some other day. But that's what you have to do, is you have to find the voice that helps the client the most. So don't coach people how you want to be coached. Be open-minded and figure out what's best for them. So, and that extends well beyond like competition day, just even regular training. So I've had clients before. I remember one client, she had a nervous laughter. So when she would come in, and I'd never trained her before, so we had talked like in person, but the first time we were training, I would tell her to like, hey, let's get in the leg press, put your feet here and here. I want you to come down and push back up. And she was very nervous about being in the machine. It was kind of intimidating being in the gym. So she was kind of like giggly and like trying to talk more than she was trying to work out. And I kid you not, this is 100% true. It was about 10 minutes into the workout, I looked at her and I said, hey, I need you to take a deep breath and I need you to stop talking. If you continue to talk, we are not going to get anything done. I understand you're uncomfortable, but hiding behind the talking, hiding behind the giggling, not letting anything happen here Okay, shutting yourself down is not going to help. So from here on out, I don't want you to talk. Now, if something hurts, if you get a stabby pain somewhere, definitely tell me. I'm not asking you to hurt yourself. But us talking is slowing things down. So just listen to the cues I'm giving you. If you have a question about the technique, please ask. If you have any pain, please ask. Okay, let me know and I can help. But other than that, let's not talk. Let's focus in on what we're doing. Let's focus in on the intent of the day, which is to make you healthier and happier and live the life you want. Okay? It's going to be a little awkward. Just take a deep breath, but no more talking from here on out. And the person actually listened. And to this day, we still laugh that was basically the first 10 minutes. Their story of it, by the way, is way more colorful than mine. So they tell everybody, like, Rob yelled at me, and he told me I need to shut up. And I was like, I never yelled at you. So I don't think I've yelled at anybody ever. So, but that's what you want to do is, for her nervousness was shutting everything down. Oh my gosh, I couldn't get anything done with her. So I had to step up, say something that was uncomfortable and challenging to say, because I didn't know what her reaction would be, but I didn't care. So, and what I mean by that is, I knew for her to improve and for her to become her best, that the talking issue was going to need to be addressed. Now, I tried to address it in a loving and compassionate way. That is important. Okay, you can't just be blunt and be an asshole about things and then say, well, their reaction isn't my responsibility. Yeah, it is. If you deliver the message like a jackass, they're going to respond like that. Okay, so you have to deliver the message with kindness, and also explaining to them helps a ton. Like I explained it to her why I needed her to stop talking. So I didn't just tell her to shut up and then have her wonder, like, why. Be like, oh gosh, this guy's such a jerk, or, I guess I'm not supposed to talk, da da da. I didn't leave any question in her mind. I told her exactly why. So that way she didn't think it was anything about her. That way there was no miscommunication. She knew what it was for. She knew it was for her. So that's something that helped. I had another client, they talked too much just out of being a talkative person. So they would actually turn their head and look damn near behind them to look at me while they were talking to me. And I had to actually tell them, hey, stop turning your head. Like, your muscles are connected to your neck and your head. If you move your head, it's going to cause you to get injured. So we don't talk while we actually lift the weights. You can talk in between, but please don't talk, and please do not look at me while you're doing the actual exercise. So that was another one that was kind of funny. So they'd be doing, I remember at first, this is just funny stories. So at first they were kind of we'd do a lateral raise, for example. And if I was slightly to the front of them, they would look slightly to their, say, left to look at me. And I'm like, well, this isn't good. I can't have them looking at me. And so I'd say, hey, just go ahead and keep your eyes forward and watch in the mirror, watch for this and this. And I was telling them body position things. So then as I explained it to that, I kind of slowly moved more to behind them, but off to the left. And then this person still turned the whole damn way around to look at me. And that's when we had to have a conversation of for the love of God, pay attention to what you're doing. So, but that's sometimes what you need. So for those two examples, I had to risk, maybe seeming insulting by telling them to please stop talking. But again, I explained to them why it was necessary, and I made sure that, at the start of their sessions and at the end of their sessions, I was friendly. I asked them how their life was. I asked them if anything exciting was going on. I remembered if they had pet names or children names, stuff like that. So you can be friendly before and after, but sometimes you got to be strict and be a little bit of a jerk during the actual workouts. So however, I have another client. He's a ridiculously smart human being, probably one of the smartest IQ human beings I've ever met in my life. And we can chat the whole time about anything. It doesn't even matter what the hell we're talking about. In between sets, all I have to do is show him the form of something once, and he pretty much remembers it every time automatically. And then he immediately gets himself focused. So I wear a wristwatch, and it has a timer function. So I'll kind of click my timer, and he automatically knows that means his time's probably up. Or I'll tap my watch a couple, one or two taps while he's talking. So he'll finish up his sentence within 3 seconds. Or he'll go, oh, okay, I'll finish after this. And then he hyper focuses, does his awesome set, puts the weight down, and then we start talking again. But his talking is not a distraction from his focus. His talking is not a distraction from his technique. We just talk about life. So So that rule of not talking is only applicable to the people it needs to be applicable. So I don't need to make everybody I work with not talk. I don't need to be a drill sergeant to everybody. I don't need to be, an empathetic friend to everybody. Your job is to kind of say, okay, what does this person need from me? What can I do personality wise to help them along the way? So sometimes I do have to be more of a drill sergeant in the sense that I have to be super serious, no bullshitting. I have to keep them focused in between their sets. I keep our time freaking perfect, otherwise they'll chat up a storm and mess everything up time-wise. So I have to be much more strict. Now, for those clients that have to be strict in our training, I try to be the opposite of strictness at the beginning and the end of the sessions. So that way they can see a tough love aspect. So they get the toughness during the training, but they get the love, the compassion, the friendship, and they know that I actually care about them by the behaviors at the beginning and the end. And eventually these people, those clients, do understand that when you're being super strict with them during the session, that's actually out of love as well. So it can be a little hard at first because they might not know 100% why. Even if you explain to them, they might say, I don't see why this matters, blah, 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 blah. But once you get a couple sessions in, as they get progress, as they get results, as you refine their form, teach them how to be safe, they're going to start recognizing that what you're doing is for them. Then you also have sometimes you need to be a loving friend to people. Sometimes people just beat the crap out of themselves. They don't think they're ever good enough for anything. They kind of downplay like all of their own skills. They come in just kind of defeated and beat up. So for those people, if we're trying something and it looks like absolute shit, but they're trying their best technique wise, you have to praise them for something. So it's kind of funny because I do not give compliments unless they're warranted, because I think that's absolutely, oh my God, like if you give a false compliment, then no one will ever understand when you're like, they'll never know when you're being truthful or not. So if I don't have something to compliment somebody for, I will actually make a joke. Like I've actually told a client before, they're like, how's this look? And I was like, well, I'm glad you came today. We're at least here. We're at least going to get something in. And they'll start laughing because you can tell that I didn't want to say, yeah, it looks good, because it doesn't. It looks like absolute shit. So, but you try to find some way of making it positive, even if the positive is a joke. But that's the idea of it is some people are so defeating on themselves that you have to be their kind of cheerleader. You have to be their like loving friend, sympathetic friend, empathetic friend. You have to like push them a little bit, but if they start crumbling or breaking down, you back off a little bit. And also I think framing the way you speak to them helps a lot, in the sense to where you might suggest something rather than tell them. So, like for example, say on lateral raises, they're bringing their hands up higher than their elbows, and they look like a dying bird. So you can say, like, oh, typically when I do lateral raises, I try to think of like getting my elbow to stay higher than my hand, so that way I can track the middle of my shoulder, not my like upper traps, like up in my neck area. So if you want to try that, that might be something that can make this feel a little better for you. So that's a much nicer way of wording it, rather than saying, hey, I need you to keep your elbows higher than your hands. Ooh, that's aggressive. So some people can handle that, and they're fine with that. They don't need the sugarcoating and fluff of the other style. But some people, you got to deliver it with a little bit more love than in other people. So being aware as a trainer that you need to have multiple voices. Now, all of my voices that I talk to my clients with, they're all me. Okay, they all like I'm never going to let them get away with something that's like dangerous. We're never going to do something that's fluffy and not worth our time. We'll make sure the form is adequate enough that we're going to be safe and get results. Okay, and we're going to make sure we pick exercises that challenge them. So if I have somebody comes in and they're like, I don't really like this exercise, but I know it's the best one for them, then I'll typically ask, well, what don't you like about it? Is it uncomfortable? Does it hurt? And I usually already know that the answer is going to be no. So, but I'll say, is it uncomfortable? Like, does it hurt? And they're like, well, no, it doesn't hurt. I'm just not good at it, or I don't like it. And I'd say, well, typically the reason why we're not good at it, or the reason why we wouldn't like it, is because it's something we need to develop. So if you were already good at it, you'd already have those muscles. So we need to attack the muscles we don't have, or the skills we don't have. And that does sometimes involve exercises we don't like. So if you want to, let's try this a little bit longer. We can critique the form, make sure we're doing it really efficiently and doing it well. And then if you don't like it after that, we can maybe find an alternative. But this is a really good exercise for you, and it's really going to help us bring up our weak areas. So explaining things like that, they almost can't argue back because you were like so damn nice, it's hard to argue back against you. But that type of conversation, that type of talking is very helpful. So that's what you want to try to do with people is understand what is the voice that you need to have. But at the same time, don't let them push you around. You're the trainer, you're in charge. You just don't have to be a dictatorship type leader. You can be more of a friend leader. You can be on their same level and be almost like a guide rather than a boss, that kind of thing. So you can change the perception of your interactions, but you still have to be in charge. Okay, you're still the one taking the reins and leading the directions on where to go. So that's one of my notes here is we want to be what they need us to be, but we want to be what their best self needs us to be, like what's going to get them to their best self, not their lazy self. So if they don't want to do an exercise just because they suck at it, that doesn't mean you give up on it. If you know it's the best exercise for them, you have to put your foot down. And you have to get them to commit to that exercise. But you don't have to be a jerk about it. You can be super nice. You just have to explain why it's the best one for them. And if you can't explain that, that's on you, okay? You need to practice that. You need to be able to... Now, it's very normal, okay, for a trainer to have instincts and say, I almost can't tell you why, but I know this is the right thing. Okay, that's fine, but don't stop there. You have to go freaking look it up, go research it, go read articles, go find exercise guides, go find the reason why you believe it to be true. Okay? So you can stick to your guns just based on instinct, but don't stop your knowledge at just instinct. You have to go look stuff up. Okay? Improve upon your knowledge. So, that's the big thing I want to get across in this podcast is when you coach people, don't coach people on how you want to be coached or how you would be coached. Coach them based on what they need, not what you want or what you need. Okay? So this is going to help you not only with client retention, your clients will be happier spending their time with you. It's also going to just make you a better trainer. You can expand to more people. So for example, I train an enormous variety of human beings. So I've trained I've trained young kids, like literally like kindergarten kids in groups, and that's, oh my God, it's like a train wreck. But it is fun. It's super exciting and fun, but at the same time, they're all running around screaming like crazy Indians and like, oh man, yeah, tie this shoe, try to get that person not to pee the pants, run around like a crazy person. So kids are fun, but they're stressful. I've trained teenagers all the way up to people in their 70s and 80s. I've trained males, trained females, trained people, pro status, elite status. I've trained true beginners. So the ability that's going to help you as a trainer expand on who your clientele is, like who you can train best. A huge, huge part of that is knowing how to modify the way in which you speak to each individual. You have to be what they need you to be. You can be yourself, okay? There is a balance here. You can be yourself, but you still need to modify who you are and how you present yourself to what their needs are. So I have very high level athletes, very, very high level athletes I work with. So I'm very lucky for that. They're elite in powerlifting, they're, pro cards and aesthetic sports, and they all need something different. So the elite athletes tend to be very demanding on themselves. They tend to beat the living crap out of themselves. So what I tend to do is be very loving, but the second they slip up on something, I am not very loving. So they have that inner kind of aggressive voice on themselves. So when their inner aggressive voice is flying high and doing well, it's great. But the second they slip up on something, I'm on their ass about it because I know that that's what they need. They're just having a weak moment, and I'm there to fill it in. When they're strong, I can hang back. So that's all it is. It's teamwork. So what do they need per day to be their best per day? If they're slipping up a little bit on that day, then I step up and take care of it. If they're doing fine, then I step back and stay out of the way. Okay? So that's your goal, is your teammates in this. Your partners in the journey. So you just fill in the gap. You play the role you need, but that's it. Okay? So understand that sometimes you have to be aggressive and sometimes you have to be compassionate and loving. You just have to be able to understand when is the right time for which. Okay, so read as many resources as you can on mental mastery. That is extremely helpful because it can help you understand like a successful mindset, like what is required for success. And then you can judge your athlete or your client and say, okay, well, what are they missing on this list that maybe I can fill in the gaps and educate them on? So the more stuff you read, like I've read dozens of books about high achievement athletes. And actually, one of my favorite books is called The Only Way to Win, where it discusses a balance between being the best athlete you can be, but also having the best character as an individual. Those two absolutely do not go together, and sometimes they can be perceived as being countering to each other. You can be an elite athlete and an elite person, but sometimes to be an elite athlete, people think they have to be very selfish. They think they have to be almost like falsely egotistical or macho or like I'm the toughest human being on the planet, and stuff like that. So it's helpful for you as their coach to learn as much as you can about different perspectives of success mindsets. So that way you can see what is the viewpoint that you want to push people towards. What do you think is the most successful? And then how can you judge your client or athlete to see what they might be missing? Then you can help fill in the gaps. Okay? So read as much as you possibly can about this kind of stuff. It really, really makes a difference. So that's what I want to get across in this podcast. Okay, is be yourself, be true to what your beliefs are as a trainer. But you have to be open to training athletes the way in which they need the most. That's going to require you to expand on how you can handle adversity, how you can handle stress. So, for example, I've had to learn that at some powerlifting meets, not talking is the best thing for certain people. So I'm naturally kind of a talker whenever we're sitting one-on-one. I'd want to kind of explain to them what I'm seeing when I see other people lift, what are common mistakes. I kind of want to educate a lot, but sometimes they're overwhelmed in the moment. They just need silence. So I'll sit there and I've had to learn to just shut up. So I've had to learn to be comfortable doing what is unnatural for me. Now, also, you might be a really aggressive, kind of like hyper-focused person, but you might have an athlete who doesn't need that. That's actually counterproductive. If you hyper-focus them, they're already too focused. They're going to start beating themselves up and start fearing all these mistakes. What if things aren't perfect? Da-da-da-da-da. So sometimes you need to just BS with that athlete about like, oh man, you see that guy's shoes? Those are pretty cool shoes. I wonder where you got those. Have you ever seen those kind of shoes? And it's something that's unrelated to what the hell you're doing, but that's what they need. They almost need a mental distraction. So especially in powerlifting, you might have 8 to 10 minutes between a lift. So from their first squat to their second squat might have 8 to 10 minutes. So if that athlete is a person who tends to beat themselves up and be a worrywart, they're going to sit there worrying for freaking 10 minutes about that next squat. You have got to get their mind off that squat for a couple minutes. Let their stress levels come back down, and then about like a minute before they go, you try to hyper focus them back in, give them a couple positive cues, and just tell them to do their best. That's it. Just say, trust your training. You might say like, hey, in the last one, we were kind of a little late to squeeze our glutes. So when you get to the bottom, I'm going to yell, glutes, glutes, glutes. Other than that, do everything we've already been doing. You've already been doing an amazing job. You are moving freaking perfect today. Okay? Just go out, do what we know how to do, and then I'll yell at you when I need you to squeeze your glutes. And that's very calming for them. So they don't have to try to do anything extra. You're going to take the role. It's almost like you're saying, let me take care of that extra part. You just do you, I'll help you out for the rest of it. And that helps a ton, okay? So, as a trainer, make sure you coach your athletes how they best need coached, not how you would need coached, okay? So read a ton of resources about mental mastery. Even pain tolerance techniques are really good. So you can learn how to do like distraction type coaching. You can learn how to do hyper focus style coaching. So all that kind of stuff is very helpful. So the more you can read, the better. Okay. And I love audiobooks because you can listen to them while you're driving in the car, doing dishes, folding laundry, whatever. So that's a really good way to get a lot of content in a short period of time. Cool. Okay. Hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully it gave you something to think of. And if you have any more specific questions about this, you can always reach out to our email at brutalironGym@gmail.com. Cool. If you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Brutal Iron Gym. Also, if you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. The more people we help, the happier the world will be. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you.